Hey everyone. In this video what we're going to do is we're going to take a really quick look at setting up inside of After Effects. We don't know how far we're going to be able to take this, but if we set things up in this way, it'll help us big time down the road. The idea is that we're going to have multiple compositions, one for footage, one for depth, and then later on, in this video, I'll even show you just really quickly how those come together for stereo or stereoscopic 3D. So what we're going to do is inside of our project, double click, bring in our footage. Typically there would be more frames for each, but these took a long time to render. You'll click on multiple sequences in that case. There we go. Now we have ambient occlusion, color, hatch, tune, and z-depth. Just really quickly, if we take a look at this hatch, you'll notice how noisy it is. Notice that just by removing the fall off, it cleans it up quite a bit. So that's probably something that we're going to do to our effects. So I'm going to remove that. Alright, so here are our 5 passes. First thing we need to do is go up to Composition, New Composition, or Control N, and create one for main. Set the width, the height, and the frame rate to be what we want. Duration, if we know what it's going to be. Alright, so that's a main one. Now we need to create another composition. This one's going to be footage. Now typically we're going to have quite a few of these in a particular scene, so we'll do 035 footage. Okay, so this will keep everything together in a nice, clean, organized way. Okay, now inside of footage, this is where we build up our main content. So we drag in our color. We can go with it selected. We can go to effect, color correction, levels, crunch it a little bit, just get the effect that we want. We can also apply a with it selected, color correction, hue saturation, and depending on what we want to get out of this would depend on what we do in this case. Alright, so with that all set, we go back to our project, and now we drag on ambient occlusion. Now the ambient occlusion in this case is fairly dark, but let's see how it looks. So we change the mode to multiply, and it's looking not too bad, but a little dark. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the opacity. So we just keep on working our way down to opacity, just to kind of get the look that we're after. Now you can quickly jump down to the opacity one just by hitting T on the keyboard with a layer selected. Now we're going to throw on the hatch, set it to multiply, and we're going to adjust its opacity. Now I found that the lighter the scene, the less or the fewer hatches you need on here, but a lot of times you'll need the full hatch, and sometimes you'll even need 2 of them to get the desired effect or darkness. I'd much rather duplicate the layers than applying a levels adjustment and crunching it, because that's going to make you lose some information. And this information is very, very fine, and we don't want to remove any. Okay, now finally we got the tune. Let me set this to multiply as well. Now you'll notice that it's a little jaggy, and that's mostly because of the resolution that we're currently operating at. You can see it's nice and smooth. Alright, so now we have our footage set up. One more thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a layer, new adjustment layer. And on this adjustment layer we're going to apply an effect, color correction, hue and saturation. This is a global adjustment that we can use to try to get things how we want. So these lower adjustments are just to get things to kind of play nice with one another. And then this one at the top is to control them all. Alright, now with this all done, we go back to our main, do composition, new composition. In this case, we're going to do 035 depth. And naturally, if you have multiple camera angles, you do A, B, C, whatever the case may be. Alright, so now inside of depth, we drag our Z depth into here. We apply an effect of color correction levels, and this is going to be primarily used for a stereoscopic 3D effect. And one of the nice things about this is if we look at our histogram, most of our information is here. And each one of these levels, or each one of these markers, represents basically something in the real world. So if we take this left marker and bring it all the way into the majority of our data, this is basically the farthest stereo effect. This middle one represents the screen, and so we don't want anything coming out of the screen in this particular shot. And then this one represents how far close, or how far something can come out towards the screen. At times you're going to need to overall lighten things up or darken them to get a very comfortable effect. Now notice all the banding that we're getting in here. It's pretty bad actually. And actually let's just adjust this a little more. If we go back to our project, down here at the bottom there's 8 bits per channel. If we change that to 16, notice how it cleans that up tremendously. This is going to give us much better results down the road. Alright, so currently what we have is we have depth footage, main footage, and then all of our separate pieces. What I recommend is creating a folder called 0, 1, 3, 5, and then you can give it a name, cool food. So I'm seeing multiples of these taking place within a single project. Let me move that solids in there as well, and we'll rename this solid as well. So we'll do 0, 3, 0, 5 adjustment, and footage. Alright, so just so we can keep all this footage and everything, pretty much intact. Okay, so now, we got this one shot going on, and we would do the same for multiples. Now let's take a look at what we need to do to turn this into a stereoscopic 3D. If we do not want stereoscopic 3D, we just basically take this footage and drag it into our main. And this way we can edit it and do whatever we need to from this point. Now, for our purposes, we actually want to create a left eye and a right eye. And this is actually very easy to do. So what we're going to do is go up to Composition, New Composition, and we're going to do 03-5 right eye. Within here we're going to drag our footage, drag our depth. Now it's important that you drag it from up here, because what it's doing is it's creating instances of that. So at any time we can go back to the footage or go back to the depth to get, or to modify it. Now we select our footage. Now again, we do not go into the footage. We just select that composition within right eye. And we go up to Effect. And we go to Distort, Displacement Map. At the top, for the map layer, we choose our depth. For displacement, we choose luminance. For the vertical, we choose off, and we set it to 0. And for the left, since we're doing the right eye, 5 is actually a pretty good value. The left eye is good at -5, so it's just reversed. We can turn off our depth, but if we turn this on and off, notice how it's shifting the pixels. And that may or may not be enough for what you want to do. So you don't want to go too far with this, or you're going to start to see artifacts. Notice right there. And so yeah, you want to try to get something that is close. You want it to be reasonable. Alright, so there's some of this that we can't adjust. The wrapping pixels will basically take these pixels from this side and bring it to that side, which isn't always ideal. So you want to turn that off. Now if we go back to our project, drag the right eye into there, and do Control-C, Control-V. We want to create a copy of it, and then name it left eye. Double click on it to open it up, select our footage, and go into the effects. And then this one is a -10. So just going in the other direction. Okay. Everything else can remain the same. Now inside of main, what we can do, or what we need to do, is we need to create a new layer. Make it a solid. And in this case, we're going to do 0.3, 5, stereo result. On this particular layer, we go up to Effect, Perspective, 3D Glasses. This warning is just saying that it typically operates in 8 bits per pixel instead of 16. So from here, what we need to do is we need to drag our left eye and our right eye footage into the same scene, or into the same composition, so that up here for the left view we can choose the left eye, can choose the right eye, and we can choose balanced, which will give us kind of an anaglyph preview. Now one thing that is a little difficult to do in this kind of situation is, especially with bright colors, is to really get a good sense of the stereo effect. So for this reason, you typically go back into footage, select your adjustment layer, and drop the saturation all the way down. Go back to main and check it out. Now, just with those settings that we had before, so for example, if we go back to our depth, select our channel, just by following these basic rules, knowing that this is the screen effectively, and then you want to have a nice range going back, and you don't want to have anything between this front one and the next one. If you can't get that, that's when you start making these adjustments. But just with this setup right here, we have a pretty nice stereo effect actually. It's clean, doesn't have any major issues. It does expose a couple of the shortcomings of the scene where the fork is kind of floating. But yeah, it works out fairly well. Nice, clean stereo effect. And if we get in a little bit closer, yeah, that can definitely work. We can now go back to our footage, put our saturation back up to where it was, and test it out again. Remember that you're going to get some color distortions, especially with scenes at such high saturation. Now once we have this, we go back to main, we select our three components, go to layer, pre-compose. We're going to put this into its own composition layer. Okay, so this composition, we're going to just call it 03-5 main. That's going to take everything and move it in there. We're now going to make sure that this takes place in there, and actually we're going to change this to the name of the scene. Makes more sense. So now this represents the stereoscopic effect for this entire clip. You could expect to have an A, B, C right after the number, the initial number for each of the camera shots. Each one of those at different lengths, but each one of those totally set up for stereoscopic 3D if needed. If we go into this setup here and we take a look at the stereo effect, if we turn it off, there's nothing there. But what we can do is we can do none, or turn that off, just hide that particular layer to expose the left, and then that'll be our monoscopic view. Okay, so that's basically all you need to do for creating the stereo effect. Works out pretty well. We're going to probably have to inflate the footage just a little bit to get rid of these borders or these edges. If the stereo effect is a little too much, you can always come in here and adjust these values. And if you need to do both at the same time while you're tweaking it, just underneath composition, do new comp viewer, set the new one to main, so our stereo view, and the other one is set to the depth. Grab this new one, dock it to the right, take this one at the left, bring it over, and now you can adjust it. So you notice by dragging this one on the left, I lessen the stereo effect. If I take this, move it in, or pull it out, I lessen the effect as well. So depending on what you want to do, what kind of stereo effect you're going for, would depend on what you do and how you treat each of these values. But generally, following these rules will get you there pretty quick, and then you can come in here and just lessen it or make it a little less severe. Okay, so that'll basically do it for this video. Just keep in mind that this sort of layout, or this kind of setup, while it has multiple steps, it will it'll allow us to go to stereoscopic 3D at a later time quite easily. The main things for right now is just making sure that we have a depth, footage, and a main. And inside the footage, we have our 4 primary passes with an adjustment layer at the top. Okay, so those are the primary requirements. And actually, let's drag this guy in here too. There we go. Alright, so let me know if you have any questions.